You're a failure.
And that's okay. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Alycia. And we're
failures
too.
We take a walk back through people's failures and relive the mistakes they made so we all can have more clarity in how to be a better human.
Welcome to the 2020 Perspective, where we make failure fun.
Welcome to the season finale of season 3 of the 2020 Perspective. Alycia, it has been a journey, hasn't it been?
It has been a journey this season. This season has pretty much been the whole year. It's been all of 2021, and we have a lot of juicy hot takes and takeaways from all of our guests in our episodes that we've talked to this year.
In anticipation of this season finale, Alycia and I said, hey, we want to kind of recap the whole year, all 20 of the episodes that we released. Some were pre-recorded, some of them were Facebook Live, and just kind of bring out some of our personal favorites, our top 10 out of that whole year. There's a lot of juicy stuff in there. Oh, so much good juice.
It was hard to pick 10 because every episode we had takeaways for, but we pretty much whittled it down to what were our overlapping favorite 10 episodes.
Yeah, because I mean, Alycia and I clearly we get along. We like a lot of the same things, and we when we re-listened to all the episodes, we said, "Great, what are some of the biggest takeaways?" And we basically agreed on so many of the things. So, for today's episode, we're going to walk back through 10 episodes from this past year that were our personal favorites. And each one has a little theme attached to it too that we saw as kind of the most resonant theme for us. But like every good failure, you got to listen for yourself and figure out what your takeaways are.
Exactly. Everyone's got their own hot take, and this wouldn't be the 2020 perspective if we all had the same perspective. But we whittled it down to what's that overarching theme that we pulled from the episode, and what are some learning lessons, or how did it resonate with us that we're using to move forward.
And in the number 10 slot for season 3, 2020 Perspective, the competitive scoring that Alycia and I decided on a couple minutes ago was Generational Creativity, a conversation with creativity strategist Rose Gabler. This is one of our Facebook Live conversations, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
The thing that kind of jumped out, obviously, is creativity as a central theme, because we're talking to the creativity guru. And one of the big takeaways for me was that the easiest myth, like the myth that needs to be broken and it's easy to break, is that you need permission to be creative. And let me tell you, that felt so freeing and so enthralling that, hey, you can be creative. You just got to say, I could be creative today. I could be creative with this small thing. I could be creative with this big thing. I give myself permission to be creative.
Yeah, I liked how we really have this mindset that creativity is only like reserved for people who have quote unquote creative type careers or roles, like an artist or a designer. But we all have the ability to be creative, and you have to find and be, honestly, like you said, have that permission to step into your creative strength, and it really unlocks your highest potential. The juices that you've got kept inside, like when you step into your creative ability, it unlocks so much more about you than you probably are giving yourself credit for. In the number 9 spot, we have Dean Kutchell, episode Wandering the World, saying yes. Okay, well, when you listen to this episode, you'll know that Dean has a couple different strategies on how to open yourself up to opportunities. And the theme that really caught our eye with this conversation is fearlessness. When you can recognize that being a failure or allowing yourself to fail is really going to open yourself up to more opportunities, you're creating an aura of fearlessness, because there's fear with everything that we do. There's always this idea that you're going to set yourself up for potential failure. So it's okay if you step into that risk or that opportunity and you fail, but you actually did it. And it probably will open up the door to more opportunities, to more friendships, more relationships, more experiences than if you had just stayed in that safe zone and stayed comfortable.
Absolutely. And it really cut deep because one of the things he talked a lot about was saying yes. And that when you're presented with an opportunity, the default answer is no. But if you say yes, it opens those doors. It allows you to experience new things. And it hit me close because I said no to a few things. And now looking back, I'm like, no, I should have said yes. I really should have said yes because there was so much more opportunity that I missed out on.
In the number 8 spot, we have IdGaff about IdGaff with Matt Javitt. So Matt Javitt is a super cool guy. He's done a ton of world traveling. He has a YouTube channel. He's been a corporate sales success person. And he introduced us in our conversation to something that we didn't even know about until we talked about this with him. But he was the creator of the clothing line IdGaff. And I mean, I'm just going to say, if you don't know what IdGaff is, go ahead, pause this, go Google it, and come back. Because I don't want to say it because my mom listens to this. But essentially, what we talked about is persistence. His failure, from his perspective, was he failed to grow this clothing brand to the potential that it had. And it was because not necessarily that he didn't put any effort into it, but he had to balance so many other competing priorities, like paying the bills, a lack of resources, a lack of time. And so what he says is when you are persistent and when you don't take that, no for an answer and you find another way around it, then there is no failure because you're continuing down the journey. If you stop with the failure, then you have nowhere else to go. And it is a failure.
Yeah, I was struck because he had a lot of energy in the episode, and he really showcased that there's this tension between hunger and trying to create something new and trying to pursue your dreams, and also the security and happiness that you got to have by having a full-time job and being able to pay the bills and feeling secure, and that there's a unique point everyone has in that tension. And maybe that's going to lead you to failure and maybe it's not, but understanding that there's going to be that tension point you got to be aware of. Moving into the number 7 slot is our conversation with Dr. Steve Yacovelli, Inclusive Leadership with the Gay Leadership Dude. Yes, that's him. That's the guy. And that episode, what was really striking to me, and Alycia brought it up too, is that this idea about inclusivity, obviously that's his jam. And the thing that jumped out at me the most is this idea of silent collusion. It's when someone says something or does something that is kind of off. It's not right. It's wrong. And nobody does anything. And that silent collusion is a red flag that there's a much deeper issue at stake. And we love talking about red flags. And I love the idea that silent collusion, the act of doing nothing, is the red flag in and of itself.
When we were talking to Dr. Steve Yacovelli, the Gay Leadership Dude, I said something in a way that was meant to be, let me understand more. Because I think that we all have this opportunity to be better than we are today. And I thought, I'm this person who's like very open-minded. I'm tolerant of others who are completely different than me. We have a podcast about perspective. So I like to think that I invite lots of different types of perspectives to challenge my own. And I made one comment that I did not intentionally mean for it to be offensive. And we're talking about inclusivity. I can't speak right now. Anyway, I said something like, so how can I, as just a normal person, be able to help promote the, ideas and thoughts and positions of others who maybe have something that is challenging for them or something that they are working through or whatever. And he was right there saying I'm normal, which suggests that other people are not. And to me, I'm thinking, I'm just a basic bitch. That's what I mean by normal. I got nothing, But essentially, it was me saying to him that you're different and I'm the standard, which is exactly what he's trying to change. And so that was okay, I got some check-in into do with my language that I'm using, because what I'm saying is not exactly how I'm intending.
And that's the gem of being on a failure podcast, is you say, like, you know what? I done messed up and I'm going to change and be better. And that's okay. That's great.
Failing in the moment.
And now on to number 6 in our top 10 episodes from season 3. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. That was the name of the episode with James Hayden. And the theme that we thought was really powerful was the theme of adversity. So James is very upfront right at the beginning, is that he's a person who stutters. That's just who he is. That's part of his identity. And the idea that he had to come to terms with that identity, and he only really did that when he got let go from what, quote unquote, his dream job was. And that whole journey is like part of the fun of the episode. But the thing that was pretty powerful for me was that we're all equipped with finding a bigger purpose when you take away the bells and whistles of what, quote unquote, success look like. And that failure is the door opening to something new. And you can only get there through the adversity of having that opportunity changed on you.
Honestly, you captured that so beautifully. I don't know what else to add except for let me just echo that same thought, that I think a lot of times we are so focused on that end goal and result that we are failing to first enjoy the journey and be open to something that might be unexpected, that might be a better use of our skills, our strength, our personalities. And so to try not to be as rigid with what you think you want to do or become, but be open to those other tiny little messages that come to you along that journey to essentially like step into your power and your strength.
Whoa, we're halfway there on the top 10 list. In the 5 slot of Alycia and Dan's favorite episodes from this past season, let's talk about accepting failure while under fire. And this was our interview with Commander Candace Frost, who is the commander of the U.S. Cyber Command. And that was such a fun interview. That is one of the most memorable conversations that we had on this season, about how she discovered that her marriage was falling apart and how she came to terms with it. And one of the themes that came out for both of us was this theme of empathy, of being aware herself of how she was feeling and realizing that other people, especially in the armed services that kind of doesn't want to talk about these feelings things, that empathy is allowing her to kind of open the door for people to be more successful. And, you know, it's tough to go through relationship issues when you are trying to serve a higher purpose. And that her journey through that failure was so powerful. And I can't wait for all of you who are listening to this recap to go back and re-listen to that episode, because it was so good.
Oh gosh, it was great. Well, first of all, Candace it's incredible, I think, to hear about a world that is so close yet so far from us, like people in the armed services. They're doing so much for our country, yet for someone like, you know, me and you, civilians, we don't really know about like what goes on inside, like the culture and everything. And she kind of cracked that door open for us to get a different perspective. And she also is a speaker, and so her story was just beautifully put together. It was a joy to listen to her. And like what you said, Dan, the empathy piece is, you know, what kind of stuck out for me is you never know what other people are going through. And so be empathetic towards others. You may not necessarily understand where they're coming from, definition of empathy, but try to step into their perspective for a moment and just understand and acknowledge what they're going through and extend grace to them. And in the number 4 spot is coaching through failure. We had 3 coaches, all from different sectors, if you will, that were joining us on a panel discussion. We had Maya Dolgan, James Kowski, and we had Kate McAlevey. 3 powerhouse coaches who focus on different types of coaching. So this was really fun from our point of view, because we also coach and dabble in different spaces as well. And so what I loved about this is how they all reframed failure in different ways. They had different approaches, different processes that helped them think through, first of all, what is a failure for themselves, but then they also coach people through their failures in slightly different ways. And it really kind of resonated with me because I'm always self-coaching myself through a lovely new failure on the horizon. But also it gave me some ideas on how I can help others, whether it's someone that I'm coaching or a colleague, think through the lens that they're looking through for their situation and help them reframe that and adapt it to come to something more functional and positive, so they can take that information and keep moving down that journey to where they want to be, to a more effective place for them.
What I, thinking back about this episode convinced me about the difference between training and coaching. Training, skills, feels more external. It's about performance. Coaching is this internal and external alignment. It's demonstrating integrity, that who you are inside is how you act and behave outside, and getting those things in alignment. And I think that conversation really affirmed the idea that there are parts of our identities that can be developed in different ways, but they need to be in harmony with each other. And that was fun. That was a fun part of that episode.
We're getting down to the end. In the number 3 spot, we have Resilience and Failure, a conversation with Dr. Taryn Marie Stayskull, who was amazing. First of all, she has such a wealth of knowledge in the resilience space, which goes hand in hand with failure. And so what we talked about with her is she has a 5-step process, or 5 characteristics of particularly resilient people. And I won't share those with you because you should listen to the episode to learn more about them.
You can go listen to the episode. It's not all free.
But she really walked us through what are those characteristics or qualities that help people be more resilient. And what we could do is take each of those characteristics and think about where, kind of making a gap analysis for ourselves. So where are we with this? Is it absent or is it present in your life? And then where do you want to be? And so how can you use your, challenges that you're going through right now, or your most recent failure or your future failure, and think about, where am I with being resilient to get through this challenge so that it's going to make me better. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to use it to be a better person and help others.
I was talking just yesterday with someone about resilience, because what else do I talk about? And in reframing the idea that resilience is not a character trait, but it's an act, it's a behavior, it's a skill. And it came out of this episode because we talked about how resilience is more than bouncing back, because you don't just bounce back from a failure or a setback. You bounce forward. You are changed. There's something new about you that you learn through that experience. And resilience is that act of bouncing. And the more resilient you are, the further you bounce forward and make the most out of those different experiences.
All right, in the number 2 spot.
Number 2!
Screw you, breast cancer. I'm hot with Alana Fink. We loved talking with Alana. Again, I mean, there's so much goodness with this episode, but essentially she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was, it kind of was blindsided by this diagnosis, and she works for a wellness and mindset company. She's an integrative health coach, and she's doing all the things that type A motivated people do. They work hard, they mom hard, they work out, they eat right, they do all the things that are quote unquote the right thing to do. However, she wasn't giving herself that grace to stop and take a breath and check in with what she needs in order to take care of herself so she can do all of those other things really well. And she was hit with this breast cancer diagnosis and had to finally walk the talk that she was doing for other people, like in her job and in her personal business. And so one of the tools that I just love that we talked about was the Trap It, Map It, Zap It tool, which if you listen to this episode, which you should, you will learn more about how to manage some of those icky thoughts that are triggering maybe like poor decisions or behaviors, but essentially it's a method to capture that negative thought that's swirling in your head that might be also impacting like a physical symptom too, to trap it, map it, zap it. So it's really like a reflection activity to help you kind of shift your mindset into a more functional and productive space.
Yeah, every time I re-listen to this episode, I feel like I get another technique out of that one conversation. So if you want to have a really valuable, basically hour-long coaching session with someone who knows what the heck she's talking about how to shift and change your mindset, this episode is that. There are zounds of wellness and resilience techniques in this episode. And in broader, it's understanding the depth of how much is out there. There's so much out there that you can use, you can learn to help manage your own mindset and change your life. And here we are at the top of our top 10 list of season 3. And to say every episode, every conversation has been a gem, but some of these gems sparkle a bit more. And the episode that sparkled most for Alycia and I on the same page, we both went through, was like, this is the top one, was our conversation with Brian Williams, episode A Change of Heart. This episode was... it had everything. It had a killer story. It had a speaker that was just engaging and charming. It had a plot twist. It had an unexpected change, and it had recommendations that you can incorporate into your life. And out of that whole thing, this theme of reflection came up. And for being the 2020 perspective, that kind of fits with like our brand here. So, that episode was so meaningful to me as an entrepreneur, and also I would say probably to anyone who strives and thinks they're doing the right thing and realizing they're not spending the time to listen to themselves, that there's a deeper right thing inside of them.
I think that there's a lot of similarities in this episode and Alana's episode. And by the way, great recap of Brian, because you hit all the spots on that. He was such a delight. So he and Alana both, they had this theme, yes, around reflecting and thinking through, like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I doing? And how do I capture this information to shift my mindset and therefore my response to the things that are unfavorable in my life? But it was like really a lot about health and wellness, both physical and mental, and how they're so closely tied together that you can't be, trucking along going 90 to nothing with your work, with your life, and then not stop and check in with your body and give yourself that grace to say, okay, I need to take a pause and check in with what am I doing that's not helping me feel good, both mentally and physically. And sometimes we don't even know that we're running 90 to nothing until something physical, like a diagnosis or something uncomfortable pops up, and we're like, okay, now I'm forced to stop and reevaluate and reflect on what could I be doing differently and better to feel good both in my mind and body.
So, Alycia, now that our top 10 is done, man, it's been a long year of failure, hasn't it been?
We've had a lot of failure this year. It's been quite personally and professionally challenging and rewarding, and I'm excited to end the season, but also to spend some time kind of reflecting on the goodness that came from all the conversations that we had.
Yeah, I was thinking that when we were doing our Facebook Lives every other Thursday, those are really awesome things that I look forward to, and I'm looking back on them as fantastic opportunities to just hang out with my buddy Alycia and talk to someone about their failures. And we've had such really fun, interesting conversations. And of course, they all ended up in the top 10. But I think personally, this season has kind of been a sidecar to my own personal failures and journey, but also kind of the thing driving me forward and being like, there's another episode, there's another chapter, there's another challenge, there's another opportunity. And doing this podcast for this season has shown me that there's a lot of resilience that we bring to the table, and we should just trust that we can be resilient when failure does come.
You captured that really great. I'm thinking about, if this were the end of the school year and we're signing the yearbook of the 2020 perspective 2022, what would you say? How would you, sign your note to your friend? And I, again, had quite a fun-filled, jam-packed 2021. And I had a lot of adventure, traveling, kind of getting back to visiting family again after a COVID year. And then personally with my boyfriend, we really, really grew such a strong relationship, and we moved in together, and I just know without a shadow of doubt he's my person. And then with my work, I learned things that I think I have been resistant to. It was like the universe was just like slamming these messages in my face to learn, and I was being very resistant. And so I learned a lot and overcame, I think, a lot of challenges in my work, my professional life too. And I think that also pushed me to dig deep into what I really wanted. So I think, like you were saying, that this show is the sidecar in a way to your personal failures and your journey. And I completely agree with that verbiage. And I like to think that every conversation that we had with people who are, quote unquote successful, they have jobs, they have families, they have friends, they're living their life, they're contributing to society, and they show up and share their failures, makes me a little bit more hopeful about what I'm going through right now isn't necessarily the final destination. And so for me personally, it's also very, I don't know if therapeutic is the right word, but maybe like cathartic to know I'm always going to be going through good times and bad times. And there are other people who are also going through the same thing. So are similar, situations. So what can I do to learn from this in order to be stronger and more resilient for the next thing that's coming down my path?
Preach, sister. I don't know what's coming ahead for the next season of the 2020 perspective, but I'm sure there's going to be failure. And I'm sure there's going to be resilience, and I'm sure there's going to be creativity, and I'm sure there's going to be humor, and I'm sure that there's going to be another season of us talking to people about their failures. So thanks to everyone who's been listening to the 2020 perspective for season 3. I hope you enjoyed this this audio mashup of some of our top 10. We're going to be taking a little break until the new year, and we're going to be coming back strong and more full of failure than ever. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, go back and listen to some failures of the past that you may have missed, and make sure to hop on to whatever podcast player you're listening to and give us a review. 5 stars is great, but 4 works too. And recommend us to your friends. And we'll be talking to more failures next year. Peace out, 21!
Peace.
Thanks to No BS Brass Band for the bangin' show music. Check them out at nobsbrass.com. And if you want to join any of our live shows, follow us on Facebook at the 2020 Perspective. That's 20/20 Perspective. As always, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player so you can get the latest failures delivered right to your ears. And may your failures be spectacular.